Chapter 2. The Captain. Near city of Groningen. Groningen Province, Netherlands. The 15th of January, 1515, later that night. The warmth and crackle of the fireplace filled the stone and wood tavern. The man made fire desperately fighting against the outside cold as snow fell lazily outside. Wood shutters over the two windowless framed openings in the stone kept the cold winter snow from falling into the tavern itself, but the shutters did little to keep the ever-edging cold from around them. Therefore, it was the chatter and laughter from those within the place of meeting, or the curse words, loud barks of defiance, or even the occasional snore that provided the needed distraction from the cold in place of the fireplace's struggles and the shutters' lackluster efforts. Card games, other games of chance, and drinks of various kinds dotted nearly every wooden table. Gentle flickering amber light from two hanging chandeliers filled with candles and several flame lamps along the walls provided a muted, but sufficient, glow for those gathered to go among their business, while a lazy drift of rich tobacco smoke filled the upper areas of the tavern. The tavern was not terribly busy, nor was it terribly without its usual patrons, with the occasional traveler or local opening the door to send a burst of cold winter air through the tavern. Of the four thick wooden pillars that supported the terracotta roof above and weaved themselves through the collection of wooden tables and chairs, most were decorated with knife carvings and full of various wanted posters, hiring notices, and other crudely written parchment or paper notices. Spelling was hit or miss, often miss, and one's choice of language was as varied as the spelling. Wanted posters were easier to decipher because of the drawings associated with them and the clear reward amount any language could understand. A person's choice of languages to choose from included everything from French, German, and Dutch to Italian, Spanish, and English. With most lacking the ability to read or write who frequented the tavern, the information contained on the wooden pillars was subject to another person's goodwill or your coin. However, if someone could simply stand after a night of drinks with good company, then you could get any poster read free of charge. A bar counter dressed the entire length of the back wall, the rare exception being a back door leading to the underground liquor cellar and upstairs living apartments. Directly behind the bar counter was a wall full of 10 barrels including various beers, wines, meads, and whiskies. Hanging off to the far left side of the wall before the counter ended were two large oak boards, which had slots with removable wooden name bars on one side each. The hanging boards were completed with a similar setup with removable wooden title bars spanning across the top of the boards, with a score system of colored circular wooden tokens in pre-made wooden cutouts spanning both depth and width of the rest of both scoreboards. Not for the faint of heart, the tavern was called Nowhere Place. Parlez vous français? Spoke a low, deep French voice, Oder Deutsch. In German with the heavy accent of French again, of Netherlands. In equally filtered Dutch. The speaker betrayed a roughness in his voice that spoke to a life of seasoned violence. Un peu français? Un peu allemand? Non. Ah. Neerlandees. Italian. Came back the voice of Giovanni Salzano from across the table in rough French. The younger Salzano's voice was stretched with weariness from his hard travel through Europe's unforgiving cold weather after the recent events of the Parabellum, events which were still fresh in his mind and his dreams. Or nightmares. Stubble from a lack of shaving over several days covered the Venetian's face, and his eyes' hard look showcased a view into his equally cold and weary soul. Sigh. Inglese. Sarebnglio panoi parlor di ipu. Scumerator. The other man's accented French voice returned as he spoke Italian now, seeking to see if Salzano spoke English. I replied, Giovanni, I do. Good, said the man in English. his words every inch accented by his native French tongue, all the better for our talk. Most people here do not understand the voice of the Englishman as well as they do French, Dutch, or Spanish. Or he nodded to Salzano after a pause, Italian. The Frenchman opposite Giovanni was in his 40s with a stocky muscular build. He would have stood slightly taller than Salzano, if he were not sitting, and whose long and unruly grey-bearded face was crisscrossed with the scars of war. His wide-brim brown leather hat worn from overuse was on the table beside himself, exposing his full head of grey hair. A long-sleeve green tunic and black leather vest over that was augmented with various brown belts, swords, and even two holstered Wheelock pistols. Finally, a tobacco cigarillo rested in his mouth and a mug of whiskey was on the table and opposite the man's hat. As for Giovanni Salzano, the young Italian mercenary was enjoying the many qualities of a mug of mead as his once snow-covered hat sat on the table beside him and his brown cloak, the snow now melted, and its watery remnants were left behind, lay over the back of his chair to dry. Despite several spots of wetness on his red shirt and black pants, the before-mentioned personal effects had done their job at keeping him dry. Much had changed for the young Giovanni. Several months ago, he had been on the run with what remained of his uncle's mercenary company, eventually throwing in their lot with a trusted friend of Giovanni's uncle, Marcus Felix Brutus. Marcus commanded the swords of Rome and took the 17-year-old Salzano under his care and tutelage to become a mercenary. The Parabellum had been Giovanni's first contract as a mercenary. While it was short, just a little spit as Marcus would say, it helped put Giovanni on the map, just as Marcus had promised it would. That being on the map led Salzano to this table and across from this Frenchman. Giovanni smirked solemnly to himself at some of the last words Marcus would speak to him before the rebellion. My inheritance. Giovanni chuckled, almost in tears at the irony of it. My family is dead. My villa was burned. And the townsfolk loot and grave rob what is left. What I have left is the clothes on my back, a sword, and the promise of an inheritance from my uncle that I was a mercenary. 4 days later, all I have left is vengeance for my family's murder by the Catholic priest that killed them. And anyone else that is connected to Father Saul. Have a bit of naive in you still, boy? Marcus asked, adding, coin is the currency of this world, and a man needs to make a living somehow. You best wise up to that fact sooner than later. You are no longer a boy, but a man. Best start acting like one and get any foolish thoughts of righteous crusades to avenge your family's murder out of your mind. Those fairy tales have gotten many a foolish man killed, I tell you. Marcus had been right. There was no going back home. Not now. Maybe not ever. On the run for the attempted murder of a Catholic priest, Salzano had few friends in this world after Marcus' death at Ver. What remained of his mercenary company and of his uncle's men either died with the Roman warrior at Ver or scattered to their own new tales after a hard-fought victory. You need a sword, Giovanni said, adding without a desire to mince words, I need a job. The Italian nodded towards the crudely written hiring notice on the pillar behind the Frenchman. At least says your notice up there. The Frenchman smirked. Bold words for someone looking so inexperienced. There are dozens of notices on those pillars. Some months old and irrelevant today. Who says the position was not already filled? Salzano dug into one of his pouches and withdrew a black circular coin laced with gold and silver. On one side it read in Servizio in Italian gold italics against the black background, while the reverse side had two crossed silver gladius swords with a human eye under the crossed swords in silver against the black background. The Italian flipped it towards the man who caught it and turned it over in his open hand, examining it. Marcus Felix Brutus the Venetian spoke as the other man looked up to him. Before his death at Ver, he gave me that. He said you would understand. Giovanni paused as the Frenchman studied the Italian, then looked at the scratched and tarnished coin again, as if seeing memories from it that Salzano could not see. Marcus knew my uncle, Bonaventure. He said to bring this coin to you. The older man nodded, then looked up at Giovanni. Marcus and I served together years ago. This was his favorite coin. He pocketed it into a pouch. He found it in an old abandoned Roman fort. The Frenchman sighed. Good man, he was. If he trusted you, so can I. Bonaventure, you said. The man smirked. Bastard of a man. I respected the hell out of him in his fighting days, however. Battle of Agnadalo, 1509. He nodded firmly across from Giovanni. That would make you Corradeo Salzano's son. Giovanni. From Venice. Salzano nodded, holding back emotion at not hearing his father's name in many years. It is me. Memories, however, came back of the last time he had seen his father alive. Now Corradeo Salzano said, kneeling in front of his 12-year-old son and holding him by the shoulders, you are my son. And I am proud of you. Very, very proud of you. Today, you become a man. Giovanni Salzano wiped a tear from his eyes and nodded, trying his hardest to keep a brave face in front of his father. The cold air that raced through the town combined with the darkening afternoon skies made the experience all that much more horrible. The impatient sounds of the two horses off to the side near the road by their large biller and the equally large man in his uncle holding the reins of the two horses just added to the misery that his father was, indeed, leaving, and nothing would or could stop him. No tears, Corradeo said gently as he looked into his son's eyes. No tears. Ever. You need to be strong. Determination. Strength. Honor. In these, my son, you will need to trust. You watch after your mother, and you do what she asks of you. No complaining. Yes, Papa. Giovanni said, starting to tear up more, his little face struggling to not shame himself. No tears, son. Corradeo said, trying his hardest to keep his own eyes dry. No tears. As his father drew him in close for a hug, Giovanni could feel his father's leather armor, the belts that hung his various equipment, and most importantly that rough stubble of his chin. His father's steady, calm heartbeat steadied the young boy. His warmth and strength gave him reason to feel safe. But it did not stop the tears. Today, Corradeo said softly into his son's ear as he held him, I am your father. No longer Papa. And Bonaventure is, the Frenchman's words shook Giovanni from his memories. The Venetian shook his head. Honorable, I hope, the old soldier said. He deserved that much. He looked around the tavern for a moment, glancing around at the ongoings before he brought his attention back to Giovanni. The name is Lafontaine Vassier. Captain of the Northern Company. He studied the Venetian's face a long moment. You ever kill a man? Yes, Giovanni replied firmly. It is in your eyes. Lafontaine studied the young man for a moment, then asked, what brings you north, Giovanni? The Netherlands is a long way from Venice. Coin, Giovanni answered, then paused, adding, in time. Answers first though. I am no sightseeing tour, son. Vassier replied with mild disgust. You either fight under my flag or you do not. I do not expect you to be. Salzano answered, finishing off his mug of mead and then raising the mug to the young waitress walking around. He called out, another round, please. The young woman came over, her curly blonde hair and young naive face betraying a youthfulness and innocence that Giovanni had lost, it felt, a lifetime ago. She was close to his age, if not a bit older in fact. What are you having, traveler?" she asked. "Meet Giovanni," said, handing her the mug, then forked a thumb towards the Frenchman. "His next round is on me." "Captain?" the woman asked, using the title like she knew the man well. "Whiskey," LaFontaine replied, handing the girl his mug. Once she was gone, he turned his attention back to Giovanni. "Before my uncle was killed, our estate was burned to the ground by a raiding gang of rogues. The rogues were paid by a Father Saul, Catholic priest. Sometime later, after escaping the priest and rogues, my uncle's ship was burned in the open sea. That is what killed him and most of his company. Right before our ship was sabotaged by a traitor, my uncle had mentioned an enemy long forgotten had returned. But he would not go into details before he died. I cannot separate the fact that it is no random luck that both Father Saul and this long-forgotten enemy are somehow related." The mercenary captain nodded with a long foreboding look. You are not wrong." He paused when the girl returned, handing each man their drinks. When she departed again, he continued after a sip of his whiskey, "But I am not interested in dying for it. Vengeance kills a man faster than the devil." Giovanni finished, continuing with, "Coin is the currency of this world and a man needs to make a living somehow." "Marcus?" the Frenchman asked. Giovanni nodded, finishing a sip of his mead. "Wise man. But words, Giovanni. Just words. I will be of no help to you. Uncle Bonaventure told me that, no matter the coin, you honor your contract. Unto death, even. Your faithfulness to that contract is the only mercy your soul has in front of God. You finish the contract. Always." Marcus. Giovanni nodded towards the coin in the Frenchman's pouch. "Gave me that coin on his dying breath. Trusting that you would answer the honor with it. The contract. Or he would not have done it." Giovanni watched as a flash of memory and pain washed over LaFontaine Vassier's face as he nodded in acknowledgement of the facts and of memories long gone that seemed suddenly very close to home. "So be it, Giovanni Salzano. Upon death. I am no fool. Coin is the currency of this world. I am here to fight for coin first. Be a loyal sword. Learn to master my art. Then, when the time is right, you will show me what I need to know." "What art do you seek to master, Salzano?" "Mercenary," Giovanni replied, adding as the winds of destiny wrapped around him in that moment of truth, "All of it." LaFontaine regarded the Venetian a long moment, then said, "Death, Giovanni Salzano, will follow you the rest of your days. Mark my words."